And we are live. Good morning. It's 11:03 a.m. today, and welcome to Chai and Why on our special 5th Sunday session. Today, we are glad to have Sarita Kamat with us. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education. Sarita started off with, she's from Mumbai. She started off doing her bachelor's and master's in biochemistry or biotechnology, something like that. And then went to IIT Bombay, did a PhD, worked in industry for a few years, and then came and joined us at HBCSE. And today, she's going to tell us something really sweet. Now, what are those sweet nothings? Let's hear from her. But before we do that, remember that unfortunately, this isn't a live session. Because of COVID, we are still online, which means the only way we could interact with you is via the chat. And we would love to make it interactive. I am sure you're going to have so many questions today. So please remember to type out your questions either in the chat box or the Q&A box if you're on Zoom, or if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please put your questions and comments in the chat. And we'll take them up as we can. We have volunteers who are monitoring the Facebook and YouTube and the Zoom chats. They will let us know and we will ask the speaker the questions, or if it's something which is not so important, we'll take it at the end. But we will definitely love to have all your questions from you. So keep them coming. And with that, over to you, Sarita. Chini, come.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and it's great to be here. I hope all of you on YouTube and Facebook also are able to hear me. Okay, and by the time that is getting done, I'll just also share my screen. Just give me a minute. So are you able to see the screen, Arnab, and also everybody else?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay. Great. So thanks a lot for the introduction. And it's my first time on this online Chai and Why, or even Chai and Why for that matter. And today we are going to talk about, this world of sugars and sweeteners. So I think this topic and this title is very apt for the series Chai and Why, right? Because I'm sure all of us like some beverage, like may it be a tea or a coffee in most cases. And who doesn't like, everybody likes our tea or coffee to be, perfect, right? Right amount of milk, right amount of sugar. So yeah, that's where chini comes into the picture. And chini means sugar in Hindi, in case anybody is wondering. So let's get started with this and let's have some fun. Yeah. So let me before we actually get into all the sweet things, let me just try to give you an overview of what we will be talking about today, right? Roughly. So we would be trying to understand what are sugars, yeah, chini. Then we will try to also look at what are the natural sources or the natural things which are sweet in taste, and then of course also a little bit about what are the artificial things which are sweet. And as we talk about all this, we'll try to bring in some interesting tidbits, some interesting stories, which will help it to put everything into a good perspective for you. Yeah. So and at the same time, I just want to be slightly cautious at this stage to tell you what we do not intend to do in this session. So as Arnab already said, so I am not a doctor, right? So I am a scientist. So we do not wish to get into the detailed medical effects of the various things that we will be talking about. Nor are we here to advise you or guide you on what you should be eating, what you should be not eating. So that is not our aim, but our aim is to give you some information and let you help you to understand this world of sweeteners, so that probably, it may help you to make better choices for yourself. Okay. So uh, I hope everything with my voice is still fine and I can continue to share my video. um, Can you just confirm for me, Arnab?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll keep my video on. Okay, it's nice. At least you can see me, if not me. So yeah. So let's get started. So before we actually try to understand what is sugar and what is a natural sweetener and so on, what is the first thing, I mean, that I feel probably I would like to share with y'all is that this process of eating and tasting stuff, right? So um, for example, we are going to talk about sweet things. So I have put some one picture of gulab jamun, which many people may be liking, which is sweet in taste. So um, will some of you want to also share, what are the sweet dishes that you like, maybe Indian or anything like? It would be nice if you can type some answers. So let's try to bring in our favorite dishes. So I'll just wait till you all. So I have put my favorite dish, so you can put yours.
Our favorite dish or our favorite sweet dish?
So
Which one do you want?
sweet dish. Yeah, yeah. Favorite sweet dish. I mean, India has such a variety of dishes that it's really impossible. I mean, it's too much actually. But if there are, especially if we have some younger audiences, kids, we may have some answers.
Well, I am a Bengali, so I have to say Rasgulla.
Yeah, yeah, right. These are sweets which
But
I think everybody will like.
we are getting some very interesting answers. We're getting malpuas, chocolate brownies, kaju katri, shrikhand,
Wow,
gulab jamun,
wow.
ice
Yeah, somebody
cream,
likes gulab jamun like me.
ice cream. Everything's coming in. Cham
Okay.
cham, puran poli.
Wow. I hope you all, still sit in the session and this mentioning all these dishes is not tempting you to go and grab something. So yeah, it's great to see all these things, right? Because these are the different dishes that we eat for some
At
special
least
occasions, probably.
person says that they do not like sweets, which is interesting. They don't have a sweet tooth. Okay.
Oh,
And
okay. Yes, yes.
another very interesting non-traditional answer is churma. That's also a nice one. Thank you, Sudha. Okay, keep going, keep going.
Okay, that's great. So it's interesting that there are people who also don't like much sweet, right? So what this shows you that, for many people, eating sweet is something that they like. They feel good, when they have sweet. But that doesn't mean that is the only taste, right? As you all know, there are many other tastes. So this is one extreme for you. But there are people who like this slightly bitter taste of many dishes. And so I have put out sweet here and I've put bitter, right? I've put the picture of a Karela. So what are the other tastes? Can you think of other dishes? So sweet is one, bitter is one. Anything else? Of course, I'm sure we all know about those, but just to, I don't want to dive into sweet all the time. We should have a good balance. So any other tastes that you are aware of, which our tongue can, which we can feel in our mouth? Okay, I have put some pictures for you to get tempted a little more for different tastes.
So
Do you
salt,
have anything?
sour, umami. These are the three answers which have come so far.
Okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, so those are actually, so you can keep putting, I mean, all of you can keep putting in. So yeah, actually these five are supposed to be the basic tastes, So sweet, bitter, sour, salty, so for pickles and all. And umami is like, that kind of your favorite instant noodles. All the masalas have that nice taste, which makes it very tempting for kids especially, and even adults for that matter. So that taste has been given a separate name, and that is called umami. Okay, and that actually has its origin in the taste of meat. So meat derived product, so that's how it comes. So yeah, these are the different tastes. Uh, and so, for example, when you're eating say a pickle, or when you're eating a gulab jamun, what happens when you pick it up and you put it in your mouth? You actually realize, right? You get I mean, you kind of realize that, hey, I've eaten something sweet. So, what exactly do you think may be happening? Yeah, right. So, let us try to understand how this entire process of sensing something happens. And we'll take the example of sweet because we are going to talk about sweet, but in effect the same thing works for different tastes. Okay, so there we come to, why do something taste sweet, right? So for example, somebody had said ice cream, I remember, in their favorite sweet dishes. So this is specially for you. So when you eat an ice cream and you just lick it, what is the first feeling that you probably get is that you feel happy, right? So this very reaction, that you're feeling happy, gives us a rough idea that probably our brain is involved, right? We are able to sense it in our thoughts, not just on our tongue. So this itself gives an idea that there is something more happening when you're just licking the ice cream, right? So what exactly happens is that, let's now try to, from this entire diagram that I've put, let's try to zoom in on our tongue. Yeah, because that is the place the food item first touches. And we'll try to zoom in on our tongue and see what happens there. Okay, so as you all must have heard these terms, taste buds, some people say this thing doesn't suit my taste bud, or someone may say Karela doesn't suit my taste buds. So, that is the way we use these terms, taste buds. So what exactly is this taste bud? So taste bud is like, just to say in a very simple way, our tongue is made up of so many cells, right? Cells. So all, as you know, all our, like our whole body is made up of different types of cells. So our tongue also has cells, right? And what is there on these cells are these taste buds, which are actually a group of cells. Okay, now these. So excuse me if my drawing is not very great. Okay, so I'm just trying to put forward the idea to you. So these red semicircles, just imagine these are the taste buds on your tongue. Okay, so they are a group of cells. And what is there on these cells is that there are certain proteins. Okay, so these proteins are the ones which are actually going to taste the thing that is going to come on your go in your mouth. Okay, so now you can see that I have shown these, different colored pieces here, right? You can see red, green, all these black, all these colors. So is this is this thing reminding you of something, some game? So I'm sure, I mean, many of us must have played jigsaw puzzles when we were kids, or if you have not played, we must have seen people play jigsaw puzzles, right? So what do you do in a jigsaw puzzle? You kind of have different pieces which you join together and it makes a complete picture, right? And you cannot just randomly pick up any piece and fit it into another, right? It has to be the right match, right? So something very, very similar happens in your tongue. So that is why, though the protein doesn't look like this, I have put it in the form of a jigsaw puzzle piece. So you can just imagine that there are many such jigsaw puzzle pieces on your tongue. Okay, and now when you sit for your meal, right, so you have different dishes, and these different dishes have these different molecules, right? So something that is sweet will have more of these sweet molecules, something that is salty will have salt in it, right? So these type of molecules will be there. And just imagine that this green piece over here, the second one, is the protein that responds to sweet. Okay, and maybe the red one responds to salt and the blue one responds to bitter, and so on. Okay, so now when you're eating something sweet, the sweet molecule, say this is a sugar or something, that actually reaches out. I mean, it kind of interacts with all these taste buds, but it cannot find the right match anywhere else except the green one, right? So that is how the two kind of fit together. And this fitting in the right manner sends a very what can I say, a very elaborate series of different kind of what can I call signals that go. These signals go to our brain, and they also go to some other parts of our body, right? So I hope I have been able to present a very rough picture of how we taste things. Okay, so this is how it happens for other tastes as well, in a simple manner. So this uh, so this is how the signal goes. So then, as I said, when the signal goes, different parts of your body understand that something has arrived on your tongue. If it is sweet, the body realizes something sweet has come, and then the body starts getting ready to, kind of utilize this sweet, right? So how does the body get ready? So as you can so you must have, I'm sure all of you know about this insulin, right? It's, I think, the most common uh, uh, thing that we know about in relation to diabetes. Ki insulin levels are inadequate, that is where people start getting diabetes and so on. So this insulin is one hormone which is an important part of this sugar utilization. So insulin gets activated and many more. Okay, and also there are many hormones, which give you this happy or a very satisfied feeling, and that is the reason why you probably get a smile when we eat something sweet, right? So so from this we now are realizing that tasting is not just limited to the tongue, right? I mean, when you're eating sweet, it's not just your tongue, it's many other things that are involved. And as I told you, our whole body is involved. And something very interesting is that there are many tiny living beings living inside our bodies, right? So you must have heard about gut bacteria, or you must have heard about these, probiotics and all these kind of things. So we say good bacteria, eat dahi or eat curd because it gives you good bacteria. So you must have heard about these kind of things either in your family or on TV, or you may have read about it. So these good bacteria are nothing but small bacteria that are living on the inner walls of our intestines, right? And these actually are very important for our overall well-being, right? Right from nutrition to maintaining overall good health. So when we are eating something sweet, it's not just that we are eating and utilizing it. Also, some small modifications of that are being used by these tiny microorganisms also, right? Bacteria also. So it's like a whole range of things involved when you're just licking one ice cream, right? So with that, we'll try to now step into our first what do you say, broad sub theme, which is about sugars. So we have understood how we probably taste sugar. We have understood what happens when we actually taste sugar, right? Now let us try to understand something about sugars by themselves. Okay, so we spoke about some dishes, right? We spoke about rasgulla and all these different dishes that are sweet, but these are prepared dishes, right? So you probably do add some sugar or you add something to it to make it sweet. But do you know of any food items, like edible items, which are sweet by themselves? And if yes, then can you just type it? You can just take a minute to think. So we are talking about not cooked dishes, but maybe just the raw things, raw stuff. It could be, yeah, it could be, say, some plant, or it could be from some animal. So does that help you to
Yeah, so
come with
the
some
answers
option?
coming in are raisins, bananas, fruit juices, fruits, uh,
Okay,
sugarcane, berries, jaggery, lots of things. Honey,
okay.
fruits again, dates, lots of things
Hmm.
being written. Khajur, same as dates. Okay,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So that's what you get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think we've got many fruits. We have also got some wet fruits like uh, maybe grapes or something, and raisins, which are the dried forms. So yeah, you're right. So these are like different fruits, and fruits are the most easy. I mean, most, what do you say? Um, a pair. I mean, what can I call it? Maybe the most obvious thing, right? Because when we eat a fruit, apples, I mean, so many fruits which are sweet, right? But there are also, like somebody mentioned, sugarcane, um, which is like sweet. Then if you remember, there are vegetables like carrot. So especially the carrots that you get in in India during the winters, those red carrots, they are very sweet, right? Then there is beetroot. I don't know if anybody has typed it, maybe they have. So yeah, so these are also sweet. So
Yes,
it's not just the
Sudha
fruits,
typed
but
beet as well.
yeah,
So beet
great.
was
Yeah.
typed, yes.
Yes. So beet is actually really sweet. I mean, it actually much more than carrot. So yeah, so these are the various forms, and also milk for that matter. So milk, if you observe, if you have it even without putting sugar, it has a sweet taste, right? And kids also like it because of that. So milk is also a source of sugar. So that's nice. I mean, we have got so many different natural foods that have sugar in them. Okay. So now let us try to see what happens when we eat these things. When we eat something that has sugar, it doesn't have to be only rasgulla. It can also be a piece of carrot or a piece of raisin. Okay. So yeah, so then yeah, so what we spoke about is that what are the foods that are naturally sweet, right? So we are trying to understand what is it that is present in these fruits, vegetables, that is making it sweet, right? Now when we ask the question what are sugars, this is a very slightly weird question, because when we use the word sugar in our common day to day life, we mean the table sugar generally, unless somebody uses brown sugar or some other type of sugar. But it generally means the sugar which you would add to your tea, coffee, or some dishes, right? So that is why when somebody says I want less sugar or more sugar, nobody asks more questions. They know that it is the table sugar. But when we try to see this word sugar from a more scientific terminology, it is not just the table sugar. That is not just sugar. So in the scientific language, sugars are more broadly called as saccharides. Okay, so that is the word that is used. We generally don't use the word sugar because that is associated with the table sugar. So you may know about the table sugar, that is sucrose, right? And you also know about this glucon D and these kind of things which we have as instant energy, right? And we all know about glucose because I mean, we measure our blood glucose levels for diabetes and so on. So these words, glucose, sucrose, we have it in our brains even though we are not studying them in science, right? So I'm just showing here two structures. So you don't have to, the aim here is not to show you the structure, but what I'm trying to tell you here is that these are the two structures, glucose and fructose, which are very common, right? So fructose is the sugar which is present in many fruits that makes the fruits very sweet, right? Grapes and other uh, fruits. So what happens is when we talk about these saccharides, there are basically three types of saccharides. Either you can have a monosaccharide, that is like what I have shown on the screen here, just glucose, fructose. Okay. Now, when you have two of such things coming together and joining, what you get is a disaccharide. Okay. So for example, you can see one glucose and one fructose, if they kind of join together, what you get is sucrose. And this sucrose, so you can see, right, it has these two things, two hexagon, I mean, kind of structures joined together. So sucrose is a disaccharide because it has two saccharides joined together. Okay. Similarly, you can
One
have three,
hexagon, one
so you'll have
pentagon.
trisaccharides. Yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry. That's right. So though both of them, so glucose and fructose both are six carbon. I mean, they do have six carbons each, but the way they are represented because of the most common form in which they exist, it's one is a hexagon and one is a pentagon. So the hexagon is the glucose and the other one is fructose. So these two come together to give you sucrose. So this is called a disaccharide. So similarly, you can have many. You can have trisaccharide or you can have more. So then they are called, if the number of these hexagons or pentagons is from 3 to 6, they are called oligosaccharides, because oligos means short, small. So that is called oligosaccharides. But in some cases, there are not just 3 or 6, but there are hundreds or maybe thousands of such small hexagons and pentagons joined together. these are very large molecules, and these are then, I mean, the numbers are so large that you don't signify it by a number, you just call them polysaccharides. Also they are called polysaccharides because, the number is not fixed. So sometimes a polysaccharide may have 100 or sometimes 5,000, so that's why they call it polysaccharide. Okay, so don't worry about the polysaccharide part, because we are going to come to just that in a minute. So let's talk about some of the major things which we consume in our diets, right? As carbohydrates. So which we many a times we call them as, this is my staple, right? Staple for a particular region, for example. So what do you think are some of the staple things that we eat, which is like the major carbohydrate in our daily meals? Maybe we can just have one or two answers even, so that it will help us go ahead with everybody. So for
Okay, the
example,
answers are
yeah,
coming in: rice, wheat, rice, maida, bread.
okay,
Um, yeah.
okay. Yeah, so rice, I think, is one of the most common things that most Indians eat, maybe roti, that is wheat, and other things as well, as you all have said. So these staples differ, right? So for example, in the Western countries, even maybe wheat is not that common, or maybe corn is used, or potatoes are used in some other places. So these are all sources of carbohydrates, right? So they become like the staple food of that region, because it's also grown at a large scale in that region, and it's also eaten, right? So as you said, rice, wheat, and all these are staples for India, right? So these staples are nothing but carbohydrates, right? So what carbohydrate is there in this? So I just mentioned to you about corn and potato. So when we say potato, I think the word starch also occurs to us, right? We say that it's very starchy. Potato is very starchy, and maybe we should not have much of it. This is something I'm just trying to bring some sentences that we may have, heard in our daily kitchen and home. So starch is also a carbohydrate, and it is nothing but a polysaccharide. So I in the like sometime back I just told you about these many hexagons and pentagons joining together in very very large uh, numbers and coming together to form a polysaccharide. So starch is also a polysaccharide, and here there are only there are only glucose units. So there are many. So you can see this two things that have appeared on your screen now. One is amylose and amylopectin. So without getting into too many details, what I want to tell you is that starch is such a thing that is made up of two individual polysaccharides, and those are amylose and amylopectin, and they get organized and packed together to form the starch. Okay. Now I want to bring your attention to the red arrow. The number is small there. The red arrow is pointing to a number written 300 to 600. Okay, so what you're seeing on the structure that you're seeing under the word amylose is not just three, but there are more than 300 to 600. So it's just been shown that way, right? So you can imagine how big this molecule will be, right? So that is why it's a polysaccharide. And when this polysaccharide is eaten, it gets digested in our body, right? And the process of digestion starts right from our mouth. There is this saliva, right? Saliva helps to act on the excuse me, starch in the rice or the wheat or the corn, and then it starts breaking it down. So basically, for our body to be able to use it, this big chain has to be broken into small small hexagons so that the body can use it, right? So uh, the process of digestion happens, and I'm just showing you one textbook type picture here of the digestive system, which we all must have seen in our school, that how the food passes from the stomach to the intestine and so on. And so that is how the starch gets broken down in these various stages, from our mouth to our stomach to our intestine. It gets broken down into smaller and smaller, small bite size units, which the cells can then have for their nutrition. Okay. And there are some carbohydrates which are known as complex carbohydrates, like I don't know if somebody mentioned ragi. They say that this ragi is better for health, or oats are better for health, or something like that, and even rice. So all these have got these are also called as complex carbohydrates, because no matter what our body does, it cannot break it down completely to those individual hexagons, right? So it needs help from our good bacteria in our gut, which actually help to break this down further. So this is how I meant that these bacteria are useful for us, and I think as we go along we will see many more cases where these bacteria are playing a part. So that is the nut in a nutshell to tell you what happens. Okay, so now uh, this is how we are actually going to utilize it. Now let us try to zoom in a little bit inside. Okay, so as this is what I have already told you about, right? Finally these hexagons and pentagons are used. So how does the stomach digested the rice, the intestine did their job. Now what happens? The cells have to use it, right? So how do the cells use it? And yes, so the cell, so I'm now going to tell you a little bit about how our individual cell actually eats or utilizes this glucose without getting into too many details. Okay, so in all our cells of the body, so through the blood, the glucose gets transported to the whole body, and all the cells in your body, if you're hungry, right? So the cells are starving, they take up all this glucose, and they take it through a series of pathways, right? And which are involved in glucose degradation, and finally it manifests itself into energy which can be used by the cell, and that is why we can do all our functions, right? Like I can talk or I can move my hand because of the energy that I have got through my food. Okay.
Sarita, just wanted to say
Yeah.
you're at the half an hour point now. Just telling
Yeah.
you this.
Okay.
Yeah, so might want to.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So so this is about all the cells. So I think liver is one organ which is very important for us, right? So we always talk about liver health whenever diet comes into the picture. So there is something very interesting that happens in the liver. So these liver cells also do the same thing. As you can see, the diagram is the same, what happens in the other cells, but in addition they are also able to use fructose. Okay, now fructose, all this while we have only spoken about glucose, but as we said, fructose is present in fruits and other things. So the liver is the place in our body where this fructose can be taken up. Other cells can't directly use fructose. Okay, so this is all, everything is good, right? I mean, we are eating food and we are getting the glucose, our body is using it, our liver is also using it. So then what is the problem, right? The problem comes when this glucose starts going too high, and it's not uh, it's going high, and then all cells are not able to use it. In spite of that, the levels are high. So what happens in this case, still the body is smart, so the body makes sure that it converts this extra glucose into some kind of a storage, like how we store things at our home, right? So that we store some money, we keep it aside, thinking that it may be useful in some kind of a problem times. So similarly, our muscle cells and cells actually store this glucose into a storage molecule, and the storage molecule name is glycogen. And here is just a picture to let you know how it looks in the zoom. If you just zoom it out, how this is how this intricate structure of glycogen looks. Now this, each individual small pixel like thing would be one glucose molecule, right? So there are so many glucose molecules are linked, and they are nicely bound together and stored. Okay, now again our liver will come into the picture, and what the liver is going to do is, it's also going to do the same thing. It'll put it to glycogen, but in addition what it also does, it also has some additional pathways, and the cells in the liver have quite a different set of enzymes and things in them, because of which it can convert some of the fructose into the glycogen, as well as it is responsible for creating these fat, what can I call, not the fat deposit, so not the cholesterol directly, but yes, cholesterol as well finally. So this is just a small snapshot, not to go into the details, but just to give you a feel कि कितने सारे reactions होते हैं उसमें, and there is lot of control happening to make sure that these so they are known as triacid glycerols which are formed, and these finally are used. So I just wanted to tell you here that when we say the word fats, it's not always bad. We need fats in our body for making various things. Our brain, for the some neurotransmitters need fats, some hormones need fats, right? So fats are needed, but the problem comes when it goes overboard, and then we start getting these low we start getting, what do you must have heard of this good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and all those kind of things. So that is where it starts affecting our heart and other problems creep in. So the take home message from this for you is that, glucose and fructose is good for us. It's not bad. Even if it is in excess, the body does store it. But if it starts going overboard, then lot of problems start coming in. You can seeing high glucose levels. You can start seeing obesity, right? You can also have some cardiovascular problems because of these lipids going out of control, and even tooth decay is quite a problem. Okay, so that is about, by this I have tried to give you a fairly good gist of what sugars are. Maybe I went slow, but that's okay. And now let's try to understand about the next theme that probably all you all are waiting for, is that the naturally sweeteners, the natural sweeteners. Okay, so which are the, I'm sure, I think when we spoke about some of the these sugars in natural items that we were discussing, we also had answers like jaggery and all, right? So these are examples of natural sweeteners, right? So can you like tell me about some more, or even if you don't type it, it's okay, but you can just think about, like jaggery, honey, we already said, and there are some more. So anybody wants to write it, or maybe we'll go if we are short on time. uh, yeah, so it's okay,
The only other one,
yeah,
the only other one which was written earlier was meathi tulsi, and I think meathi tulsi is effectively stevia, and that we'll come to in a bit later anyway. So yes,
correct,
meathi tulsi is also a natural sweetener. That is a plant which is very sweet, um,
correct,
or has molecules which are very sweet.
yeah.
Um, okay, but go
Okay,
ahead,
fine.
go ahead.
Yeah. So we have all this jaggery, honey, and even in jaggery, I think if we have audience from different parts of the country, they would know that there are different types and different colors that you get it in, right? You have palm jaggery, you have sugarcane jaggery, and so on. But what I want to also ask you, that it's good that we all have used these sweeteners in our food for specific dishes. But do you think you've also heard something or read something about these things, which are, showing that how these natural sweeteners are so great? I mean, they are, they can solve so many problems. They don't increase your blood glucose levels, and you can have them liberally even if you're suffering from diabetes. So rather, I have actually also read blogs where people say you should have jaggery if you are diabetic and don't have sugar. Instead, why don't you have some jaggery? Also, one very interesting thing that I observed during the lockdown, which I think some of you also must have observed, is everybody was home and everybody was cooking at home, and everybody was busy looking at various recipes. What I found very striking is that there are many recipes of especially sweet dishes that are coming up these days, which say that this is a healthy dessert. And when you see healthy and you scroll down and you try to read it, what it has is that it has either jaggery, or it has pulp of dates that is being used. So no sugar is used and it's healthy. So I'm sure you must have heard about such things, and if not, the next time you probably come across such things, I'm sure it'll grab your attention, right? So we will try to see if some of these things are true or not today. Okay, so these are some of the things that we already listed over here. Maple syrup is one addition which is not so much you had in India, but it's enjoyed more in the US probably. They have this sap from the maple tree, and that is used to make a sweetener. Okay, so just look at the other column here, and it's showing you what is there in those. Okay, so the first one is the table sugar, and look at all of the other ones. So you can, a quick glance itself is telling you that okay, looks like everything is almost the same, right? You can see sucrose, you can see glucose, you can see, maybe you can see an occasional maltose here in honey, but that is in very less amounts, and that's okay, that is a sugar. So what is it? I mean, then what is it that, why are they called healthy? Okay, so that is, they are called healthy because they, some of these also have some other nutrients. Okay, so about these other nutrients we'll come back in some time. So just remember this and we'll come back to this. For now, let me just tell you a little bit more about these sweeteners and something else that you may have heard in the same messages or the same blogs. Okay, and what you must have probably heard is this term called GI. So GI is glycemic index, and many places where they call these jaggery or honey. So jaggery is also good, which we call good, right? So many places they say that this has a, it's low in GI or something is high in GI, and this GI, it's become like a fad word. Okay, so originally this GI was, this glycemic index was actually this term or this concept was created when diabetes came up as a very serious problem in 1980s or 70s, and that is where this term was coined. So what it means in a nutshell is, how it is tested is that it is, so this is not a number. So glycemic index is a number. Okay, but this number doesn't come from some experiment in the lab. Okay, this number actually needs human volunteers. Okay, so it's conducted on humans, right? So they are given a particular food item, so whichever is the food item for which I want to find a GI, they are given, the person is given it, that to eat, and after 2 hours the blood glucose level is measured. So it's simple. So you're trying to see what happens after 2 hours. So it so happens that because of the way different food items are digested and used, the way I showed you before, different food items need different time for the glucose to show up. So just look at this graph here. So the vertical y-axis is showing the blood glucose levels. Okay, and I mean, it's not showing numbers, but it's just showing the blood glucose levels, and the x-axis is showing the time. So you can see the red one, the red line is something that, when you eat it, immediately the glucose levels come up very high and they are utilized and they drop down. So such foods are having this high y-axis number, and they are called high GI foods. Okay, whereas there are certain foods which take more time, they will be digested slowly, the glucose hexagons will be released slowly, and these are known as low GI foods. So this is what GI means, and this is used a lot. I mean, this is really used anything you read. I mean, if you, after this session, if you go and try to Google, you will get this, that how low GI foods are healthy and high GI foods are bad. So which is true to some extent, but now that we have tried to understand GI, I mean, let us just try and play this fun thing. So you can see two pictures here. One is a chocolate cake pastry and another is a watermelon slice. Okay, so both are sweet, as you know. So based on what we just discussed, so any guesses, like which thing, which of these two do you think will have a high GI? So remember, high GI is something that is generally called unhealthy. So which food do you think would have a high GI?
Okay, so let's see. We are having some mixed responses here. Let's also wait. Give it some time so people on YouTube can also answer. People, if you're watching on YouTube, please do put your things in the chat as well. Out here, let's see. Let's see who is saying what. Let me go down. Oops. Wait. They're coming too fast. Hang on. Okay. So Aradhya says chocolate has more GI. Swapnil, chocolate has more. Anagha, watermelon. Sahir says pastry, Meenakshi cake. Arya says both have high GI. Dhanashri says the pastry. Code Mantra says chocolate has high GI. Rushikesh says, oh, Rushikesh has put an emoji. Now, what is that emoji? I think that's chocolate. That's chocolate. Dhanashri says low GI is watermelon. Cake, high GI. Okay, it's time to give them the answer now.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the answer is actually that surprisingly the chocolate cake has low GI and watermelon has high GI. So the value for watermelon is around more than 75 or so, and that for cake is much lower, maybe in the 40s. Okay, so this is not for anything. I mean, this example, there would be some such examples. So this is not always true, but the point I'm trying to make is that um, relating the healthiness of a particular item just based on its GI value may not be a very um, scientifically correct thing to do. So this is one of the things that we would like to tell you. So this is, you have to be cautious when you talk about GI values.
Sarita, maybe
So
you should
yeah.
just explain why the chocolate cake and the watermelon have the GI is how quickly the sugar gets into your blood. So for the
Yes. So
watermelon, you're saying that the sugar gets into the blood very quickly, whereas the
yes.
chocolate
So
cake
it's
has to
like
be
water
digested,
and
and yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
So
basically like a sugar solution.
yeah, so it gets absorbed quickly, but it is still healthy. Though the GI
Correct.
is high, it's healthy because
It
it
is
has
still
a lot of
healthy.
vitamins and it has fiber also, a lot of fiber,
Okay.
right? You can see that fibrous thing that's left out. And for the
Uh,
chocolate, actually, if you just try to see the GI value of the chocolate or the cocoa extract, cocoa beans, so that has a low GI because cocoa has many other benefits. So because of that, this dish chocolate cake has a low GI, but it has other things like maida and sugar, more added sugar that make it unhealthy. So that is the rough reason why it's so. And so yeah, so that is the point. The glycemic index may not always be. So having said that, let me also show you the glycemic indices of these common jaggery and honey and things. So you can just take a look. You just have to see at the last column here which says glycemic index, and just you can just see that for most of the cases the values are in a similar range, maybe 50 to 60 in that range. Okay, and even if for some uh, the value is low, as we have already discussed, it may not necessarily mean that it is okay to have it a lot, right? So that is it. And now remember I had told you about these extra nutrients, right? Healthy nutrients. Yes, Arnab, are you saying something?
no, no.
Okay, so we were speaking about these extra nutrients, right? So let's also talk about that to understand these sweeteners completely. So yes, these so basically why these sweeteners like jaggery or honey or different types of jaggeries are called healthy or nutritious is because they are not processed to a as much extent as a sugar is processed, right? So you'll take the molasses from the sugar cane and it's like heated, and that orangish brownish colored thing, it's allowed to heat and settle, and that is what you get finally as jaggery. So whereas there are more processes of bleaching and crystallization that take place to give you this table sugar. So because of this inherent less processed nature, jaggery retains some nutrients like different minerals, iron, magnesium, potassium, different minerals, mainly the B complex group of vitamins. Okay. So yes, they do have nutrients, but the question that we should also ask is how much? How much do they have? So this is just one table for you picked up from a paper which is showing you how much of these some of these nutrients are there in 100 gram of a cane jaggery. Okay, so let's just you can see different, you can see different minerals and you can also see vitamins. So just for I mean, let me just take the example of iron, because iron is one of the most I mean important minerals, right? For it's present in our blood, right? The hemoglobin has iron, and even for kids, growing kids, iron is supposed to be important, right? And many a times we are advised to have jaggery when we are having an iron deficit. So if you see the number here, Okay, so 100 gram of jaggery has some 10 to 13 milligram of iron. Now, if you see our daily requirement, uh, on an average, we need say around 20 to 30. So I've written this range here, 10 to 30 milligram of iron. So let's say average of 20. Okay. So basically, if you eat 100 gram jaggery, you would get 10 milligram iron. So if you want to satisfy your daily intake of iron through jaggery, you'll have to have 200 grams of jaggery, which is like almost little less than the pav kilo, which is quite a bit. Imagine eating that entire jaggery to get your iron. Similar would be the case for other vitamins. So when we say that these things are healthy and they are very nutritious, you have to look at it from a proper perspective, right? How much do you have to eat? If you're going to eat pav kilo of a jaggery, you're also going to put that much more amount of sugar in your body. And do you need it? Right? So instead, why not have some vegetables, or why not have some fruits for this iron or vitamins? Right? So this is the message that we are trying to convey to you, that look at it from a complete uh, perspective. Don't zoom in into individual nutrients and say that, oh, it's very healthy. All right. At the same time, we cannot negate or deny that yes, these nutrients are present. So if we take it in small amounts, yes, it's good. Okay. And also, I think we all know that in many cases, what we know as natural sweeteners also become artificial, because all the many companies which actually make them to cut costs, they will mix in some other sweeteners in it. So though you feel you're eating natural, you may not be. Okay. So that is about our understanding about natural sweeteners. So now let us go to understanding the artificial sweeteners. So as far as natural sweeteners are concerned, looks like many of them almost are about the same, with a little tweaks here and there. And it's okay to have them, but not replace them and have liberal amounts and think that nothing will go wrong. Okay. So yeah, so now let us come to these artificial yeah.
Maybe, Sarita, maybe one more thing we forgot on that table of yours. It actually reminds me of a very important thing, which is that many people say that jaggery is natural and sugar has all chemicals added to it. Actually, it's
Yes.
the other way around. Sucrose is one chemical. You've actually removed all these, good nutrients. You've removed them. Jaggery
Correct.
actually has more chemicals because each one of those, whatever your iron oxides or whatever they are present, they are all chemicals. So this whole concept of sugar has chemicals and jaggery doesn't have chemicals is actually not correct. Jaggery has more chemicals, good chemicals, useful for the body, but sugar is almost pure sucrose.
Correct.
Yeah, and everything is a chemical. Even
Correct.
water is a chemical. So
Yeah, this thing
yeah.
is very important. This point is actually very important in not just in sugars. You see so many other things, these advertisements, they say chemicals are bad, but look, finally everything are chemicals. So we have to qualify them, right? So yeah, thanks for that point. Uh, okay, so now we'll come to some of the artificial sweeteners, right, which have come up, and we'll try to understand maybe some things about them. Okay. So, as you know, sugarcane sugar has been in use since a long, long time now. I mean, it's not a very recent thing, right? Since many centuries, at least, sugarcane, jaggery, sugar is being used to sweeten things. But artificial sweeteners is something that has come a little recently, comparatively, maybe in the last 100 years or so. Okay. So, and where are these artificial sweeteners used? So I've just tried to put this here because obviously they are used in, I mean, we've seen advertisements of these artificial sweeteners, and they say that you can put this and you can make your desserts, or you can put it in your chai coffee. So that is obvious thing. But something that is not very obvious, or something which we don't realize, is that some of these non-food items like mouthwashes, or especially toothpaste, these also have these artificial sweeteners, right? So so you remember, like, the toothpaste also has to have a little good taste, right? If it is I mean, that also adds to good feeling, and it also acts as a filler, some of these sweeteners. So these sweeteners are used also in such non-food item related products. Okay. So as I said, these artificial sweeteners have come up comparatively recently, but in this short time span, many different sweeteners have been discovered or invented. Okay, and this diagram is just to show you how, slowly the list is getting added. So just as we saw a boring table for this thing, this is another table for you. Sorry. So this table actually is showing some of the names of the artificial sweeteners. Okay, so when you buy an artificial sweetener from the market, you don't see these names. Okay, you generally see some brand names, right? So these pictures in the side, and these are not the only pictures. I've just put some to help you recollect. When you go in the store and you see this, these are the artificial sweeteners. We do not see these names like aspartame and all that commonly, right? But the name that is given here is the actual ingredient, that is the sweetener. What is more important here is that the second column, which shows how many times this particular thing is sweeter as compared to sugar. So just look at the numbers. I mean, that means, what it means is that if I eat 1 gram of sugar versus I eat 1 gram of the first one, say saccharin, this saccharin ka 1 gram will be 500 times sweeter. Yeah, that means to have the same amount of sweetness, I will have to have such a small amount of saccharin. That much, it gives a concentrated taste feeling, right? So these are the numbers, and you can see some of the numbers are like really high. You can see 8,000 and really big numbers. You can also see some numbers like 1 or zero point 0.6, which are not that high. So these numbers suggest that these sweeteners are about as much sweet as sugar. Okay, but still they are made and still they are sold, because they are not going to supposedly add to your calories or something like that. And the last column here is actually trying to tell you that some of the, like somebody mentioned sweet leaves as a natural sweetener, right? So there are some sources which are naturally sweet, but they are incorporated into these artificial sweeteners by some amount of processing. So these stevia leaves. So from stevia leaves, it's not recommended to eat stevia leaves directly. Some of it can also have some toxic compounds, which may be toxic in the long run. So some compounds are extracted out of it, processed, purified, and then sold as the stevia sweetener. Or even high fructose corn syrup. You must have heard of this term. So this last one, HF, that actually stands for high fructose corn syrup. That is also made from corn. So the sweet corn is sweet. So it's made from that. So it is a natural source, but it is not as it is. It is processed to make some changes in its composition, and that is why it still qualifies as an artificial sweetener. Okay. Now, if you are wondering, what are these molecules and how come, I mean, how they are sweet, let me just remind you that you remember we had seen the jigsaw puzzle some in the beginning, how the taste receptor has a jigsaw puzzle protein and how this sugar molecule fits in there. So what these molecules like these saccharin or sucralose, all these, what they essentially do is that it actually is able to bind to that green jigsaw puzzle piece and still uh, what can I say, activate all the pathway, because of which we feel we have eaten sweet. Actually, we have not eaten sugar, but the feeling we get is that we have eaten sugar, because this molecule is such that it is mimicking it and it's kind of triggering the pathway, and that is what makes it so interesting, right? That how, and when we'll also see um, some of the structures at a later stage, which will tell you how different these some of these structures are. Some of these are like very complicated molecules, whereas sugar is quite simple. Still, this complicated molecule is able to make you feel like you ate sweet, right? So, uh, so because these molecules are so interesting, it's also quite a nice thing to see how these molecules came about. How did we know that these are sweet? Because some of these look so different that you wouldn't guess it, right? So let's see just one or two quick fun tidbits about how these sweeteners um, were found. So one thing, I mean, in case of the first sweetener that was identified, that is saccharin, what happened was that it was a case of a person working on a completely different, I mean, the scientists, those who were working, um, who actually discovered this saccharin as a sweetener, were not working on sugar, or they were not even trying to do anything with sweet. Okay, so a group of scientists, they were working on coal tar derivatives. Okay, so it has got nothing to do with food or sugar. And what happened is that the story goes that I forget the name of the scientist right now, but the scientist who was working on this, right, he was working and he forgot to wash his hands. Okay, and then he just went to have lunch, and he actually, basically, he tasted the taste of his own finger, and it tasted sweet. And there is another alternate story that there was a cigarette that was left on his bench, and he picked it up, and when he went to smoke it, he felt something sweet. So that was like a surprise, ki there was no sugar here. What is sweet? Then the and yeah, so then they actually went back and tried to go back and see what was it, and they tried to understand its properties, and that is how saccharin came into the picture. And it was called saccharin because it tasted like sugar. So that was how the thing was actually discovered. And later, why it got more, this was quite early, right? I have written around 1890, so in the early 1900s. But later, during the World War and all, what happened is the First World War, actually, sorry. um, what happened is that there was scarcity of sugar and all, and due to those conditions, this discovery of this sweetener, which is not expensive and it can be made chemically, got importance. And then slowly the problems of diabetes and all, as they were realized, and the health consciousness started coming up, this saccharin got more and more importance, and it came into a commercial product. Okay, so I will probably show you the structure. So the saccharin actually has a sulfur molecule, and it doesn't have, it's not like the um, simple carbon, hydrogen, oxygen thing that we saw for glucose. Okay. Now, another interesting example is that, and which often happens in science, is that there are some mistakes. So the scientist apparently makes a mistake, but because of the mistake, he or she stumbles upon something very interesting. And that happened with uh, another sweetener. Okay, so this is quite late in 1970s, where a team of scientists were working. This time they were working on sucrose and derivatives. Okay, so they were in that zone. And what happened is that when they were working on certain intermediates of sucrose and certain derivatives, the mentor, that is Leslie, he asked the student, that is Shashikant Fadnis, to you know test the compound. But this word test is like, it can be interpreted as test or taste, right? So many a times we say, "Ki, why don't you taste it?" But we don't mean taste it, we mean test it. But what happened is that this scientist, he actually assumed that the professor is asking him to taste it, so he tasted it. I mean, that was a mistake, and it could have been a very dangerous one as well, right? If it was a toxic compound, and what if it was fatal, right? But luckily for him, it was not toxic and it was sweet. And there began that is how the other sugar. So that was like that was sucralose. So that was like uh, sorry, that was like the sugar alcohol thing. So that is how they realized that there is something that is sweet. Okay, so these are two, and there are a couple of
No,
others as well for
this is
some other
sucralose. This is
sweeteners.
sucralose. This is the story of
Sucralose, yeah, yeah,
sucralose.
sorry.
Yeah, this is the story of
Yeah, yeah, right,
sucralose.
yeah, yeah, correct. It's the story of sucralose. So the point I'm trying to make is that such things happen often, and though artificial sweeteners are now a commercial product, they have actually begun either out of these unintended discoveries or some kind of happenings, right? So this often happens, as we also know in the case of penicillin, right? So now I had told that we'll probably be seeing some structure. So this slide is just to give you a gist of how some of the sweeteners look. So the example that we just spoke about was sucralose, right? Uh, that in which the scientists tasted it. So this is the second one here. So you can see sucrose and you can see saccharin, the third one that we discussed about the in the first example, and some more. Aspartame. Aspartame is something many of us must be knowing about because it is more commonly known as an artificial sweetener. Now, some of these structures look complex and some of them really are complex, but some of them are comparatively simpler to understand. So let us just take a quick look to see, just to appreciate um, how small things can actually make something sweet, or, it's quite amazing if you think about it actually. So the first thing that we'll be talking about two examples only. So the first example would be the alcohols, right? So we all know what is alcohol, right? So when we say alcohol, um, what comes to our mind? Probably all these alcoholic beverages which have ethanol, right? So we talk about ethanol and we talk about wine and fermentation and all these things where alcohol comes into the picture. So alcohol is actually, if you go to the chemical structure, this is this OH, the OH bond, the OH moiety that is attached to a carbon that gives you alcohol. So you have methanol. So you can see that you have methanol and ethanol, and ethanol is something that is very good. Yeah, I mean, it's there in all these alcoholic beverages. But at the same time, methanol, which is quite similar to ethanol, if you just see the structure, but just that it has only one carbon, but methanol is quite toxic, right? So such things happen. I mean, there are very molecules are similar, but they have quite different functions. So the alcohols that we are going to talk about with reference to sweeteners are known as the sugar alcohols. So just as we have this methanol, ethanol, if you just try going uh, in a sequential manner and you add a whole lot more of OH groups, this, for example, this ethanol, it has only one OH. So if you start adding many, many more, you start having a big array of different compounds, and you can see, I mean, you can see some of them here, which are like, they have different number of carbon atoms. Like with methanol it's one, with ethanol it's two, and then you start going with glycerol, three, four, like this, and so on. Okay. So so you can see that simply it's quite simple, right? If you just see from the structure, it's just like there are more OH groups that are getting added, and that makes this compound slightly sweeter. Okay. So the numbers that are written here show how many times sweet it is as compared to sugar, and you can see they are not like way sweeter, like they are not 100 times sweeter or anything. It's very, very modest, quite similar. Okay. And the trick here is that because of these multiple OH groups, these kind of compounds, if you start having them a lot, they start giving a laxative kind of an effect. So you can have diarrhea or something if you start overeating. So you cannot. So that is why such sugar alcohols like mannitol or erythritol, these are used, but they are not commonly used in our food items. They are used more in these toothpaste and those kind of things to give it a slight sweet taste, right? And if they are used in commercial sweeteners, they are used along with something else. That's how it goes. So that is the thing, how the OH group and addition of OH groups is making something um,
And
sweet. So
this
yeah.
also tells you why except in the textbook, no practicing chemists ever use IUPAC nomenclature.
Yeah. So you can see these big names, right? Butane 1, 2, 3 triol, and by the time you go to hexane, it's like so big. So yeah.
And
So
it's also the other interesting thing in this slide is the last guy. If you see this inositol, this is where you have the same hexane, but it's cyclic, it's closed. Our body actually converts a lot of the glucose we eat into this molecule. And this molecule is responsible for a lot of signaling processes in the brain. It's not just sugar for energy, but it's also part of signaling in the
correct.
brain. So, these sugar molecules are there in various biological processes in all kinds of organisms. Uh, quite amazing.
Yeah. And not just that,
Yes, I think there's a question, and I will clarify that 0.6 means it's 60% less sweet than sugar, than sucrose. The comparison
Yeah.
is with respect to sucrose.
Yeah. So also to add to the same point, right? These sugar alcohols, right? Like mannitol and all, they are also present naturally in fruits and all in very less amounts. So these are not like a complete product of the lab. They are present, but when they are required to be used as sweeteners, they are not extracted from fruits. So they are made separately. So they take glucose and they try to, or the comparable sugar, and then they convert it into the alcohol. So so yeah, I think when we talk about alcohol and taste, there is another one that may have occurred to some of y'all, that is menthol, right? It has the, it sounds right, menthol. So it has the alcohol group, you can see. But I think this is I mean, it does affect our taste buds. We do get that minty feeling, right, which comes from these peppermint leaves, the product that is extracted. So this is not exactly a sugar, but quite similar, I must say. But technically, it doesn't come under sugar, but it is quite similar to a sugar alcohol. Yeah. So another example, just as we saw this, maybe we'll see another quick example, that is. So these are the same, hexagons and pentagons, as Arnab put them, glucose and fructose. And when they come together, we have seen you get sucrose. Now, what happens is there is a sweetener called sucralose, which looks something like this. And if you just look, they both look the same almost, right? But if you just see, there are chlorine atoms in sucralose, whereas in the sucrose it's hydroxyl, that is OH. So this kind of, I mean, at least it may not be simple to make this, but if you just look at the structure, it looks like a simple modification or a replacement, which is giving a sweet taste, and that too a sweet taste associated with the compound having chlorine is something, it, at least I found it surprising, because chlorine is not associated with something that is safe to have, right? Hydrochloric acid or something, chlorine gas, which is not very good for us, right? But this is a, molecule which tastes sweet, and it's also not really digested by our body, so it just comes off. So the chlorine doesn't really break up inside and affect us. Okay.
Sarita, it's
So
like
yeah.
12:15 now. I think we
Okay.
should
Okay.
move to the end because I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of questions. So we
Okay.
should keep
Fine.
time for
Fine.
questions.
Okay, so I'll just run. I won't
Uh,
get into the things, and just one thing I would like to tell is about this aspartame, right? So the aspartame that is used in the sweeteners comes in a similar way from two amino acids, like which are shown here, aspartic acid and phenylalanine. And because people found that this aspartame has some negative points, like it can't be used for baked products, because it just it's not stable at high temperatures. Because of that, what people did is that they tried to make some more variations to it. They used vanillin, which comes from the vanilla bean, and they made something called as advantame. This advantame is much stable with heat, so you can use it for your cakes and biscuits. And it is also, I mean, useful in certain cases, certain disorders, which I can come to if needed later. So, as I said, why these sweeteners are being, just give me 5 minutes. So, why these sweeteners are being what can I say, propagated, or why have they been accepted, is because the most common thing that you will hear is that they are not metabolized by our body. So though the tongue is tasting it as sweet, it's not getting used. It is just coming out either most probably most in most cases through the urine. Okay, so it's unused and excreted out. Okay, but in some cases partially it is used by our body as well. But what doesn't come out commonly is that though it's not used by our body, in some cases it is used, or it is seen by the bacteria again in our gut. Okay, and this can have some effects. So the bottom line is that just because something is not metabolized by our body doesn't mean that it's safe. Whatever you eat, it came out, doesn't mean that it's safe. Okay, so that is the bottom line, that one has to just be a little careful. And as I said, these AS stands for artificial sweeteners. So though they are not used, they actually, it has been found, and this is a topic of much research, that these artificial sweeteners actually change the kind of bacteria in our gut, or they have the potential to change it, because it's a different type of molecule, so it doesn't suit the usual lactobacillus or the usual bacteria, and some other kind of bacteria start growing in number, and these other bacteria may not have the same good effects as the lactobacillus. So this alteration in the gut flora can have some consequences which are being studied. And another thing which relates to what we started this ice cream thing, that you, I don't know if you remember the tongue and the ice cream diagram. So though this sweetener is sweet, but it's not sugar, right? So the whatever pathways we saw, it's not going through those, right? It's not giving energy and all, but it is triggering the pathways. So I told you that tasting is not just about the tongue, right? It's about many things that are happening in the body. So what has been found is that in many cases, if there is overuse of these sweeteners, like if you consume it in like a complete replacement for in large amounts, then what happens is that the body feels that something sweet is coming, so it gears up to for it, but it's something else, right? So what happens is that it, in many cases, it has been found that it leads to people having more cravings. So that satiety, or that nice feeling that you get after a good meal, that doesn't come. It help you. So you've had a dessert, you've had a gulab jamun with the sweetener, still you're craving for something more, and that makes you overeat over a period of weeks or months, and that can still give you problems that are associated with high sugar, right? So it's not so simple um, that you can just replace it completely. Okay, and as I said, this is an actively researched thing. And I think when we talk about questions like whether we should have a natural sweetener or an artificial sweetener, those are valid questions which we should think about when we are consuming. But the bigger question is also whether we should have sweeteners, you know. So it's not about natural or artificial, but any sweetener and in how much amount. And as I said, I think we have seen multiple examples today, which is showing us that it's not just about particular sweet. You should not look at it from a very focused way, but look at the bigger picture. What else are you eating? Are you eating fiber-rich foods? Are you also exercising? Are you sleeping well? So our body responds to this as a complete package and not just as individual sugar molecules that are going in. So that is the thing I would like to probably end with. And so yeah, do keep the chini come always, whether it's a natural or this thing. And based on, I mean, we have to be more alert consumers, and look at the complete thing, look at your complete body and look at your complete lifestyle. So probably I'll end with that. I'm sorry if I'm just overshot a bit, and maybe we can discuss more. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. This was really, really, really very, very informative, very interesting. I am sure that there are going to be a lot of questions. There are already some questions on the chat. Please put your questions on the chat. We will take some of them which were asked earlier. And that's a great idea. Somebody saying the next chai should be on Namakkam. Okay, but
Yeah, that is also
let's first so Swapnil had a question about how do they measure the level of sweetness as X times as sweet as sugar or something. I can answer that actually. I know how it's done.
okay.
But if you want to go for it, that's also fine.
Yeah, maybe you can tell, because I am
Okay,
not
so
completely clear. Yeah,
it's actually very, you're absolutely right. Taste is a human sensation, so you need human subjects.
correct.
So what they do is they first give you plain water. So they have lots of people. Okay, they're all given plain water at first, and then sucrose, sugar. And normally you slowly add a little bit of sugar, 0.1%, see if somebody can taste it. Okay, add a little bit more sugar, see if somebody can taste it. So most people can taste sucrose at around 0.5% solution. Now you take your artificial sweetener and add, maybe 1 milligram of it or some very small amount, see if anybody can taste it. Right, the level at which 50% of the people are able to detect the taste that it's sweet is how many milligrams or micrograms or something they're put, and that compared to what sugar is, how many times it is sweeter than sugar. That's what they do.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if there are questions on YouTube. There is a question on YouTube saying why, from Facebook. Let's take a question from Facebook saying, why can't we digest cellulose?
Why
Not
can't we
correctly.
digest?
Cellulose.
Okay. So yeah, so cellulose is actually found, so animals can digest cellulose, right? Because that it's present in leaves and all this plant material. So the simple reason is that we lack the enzymes. So as you know, there are enzymes which actually help whatever starch and all we eat. It's broken down by these enzymes in our body, right? By in the intestines, or sometimes by the bacteria. Now in humans we do not have the enzymes like cellulases, which though it's made of glucose only, but we don't have those enzymes. So it just comes out as it is, like fiber. And animals like cows and all, right? So these animals actually have a very special set of bacteria inside their guts, which are able to secrete these enzymes and degrade the cellulose and help the cow to utilize it. And by the way, some of these bacteria, I mean, the pathway that some of these bacteria also produce a lot of methane gas as they are metabolizing. So that is also associated with the methane release that occurs from the cows. So I
Okay.
hope I've answered.
Yeah. So now let me get back. Yes, Gautami, I have your question. Aradhya, I have your question. We'll come to it one by one. Just give us some time. Okay, there is a question in the Q&A box as well. Yes, Sudha, we'll come to it. So one of the questions which came long time back, let me just go back and find it, is about the, some people claim that where is it? This one gone. Yeah, jaggery has an antacid. Jaggery is used as an antacid, like, people say it.
Antacid. Okay.
Yeah. So
Antioxidant. Antacid.
antacid, no, because see, it has small amounts of magnesium oxide. Your the old-fashioned
Correct.
antacid, the digene gelusil kind of antacid,
Digene.
not the ranitidine or the newer kind of
Correct.
antacids. The older kind of, they're just bases, magnesium oxide, calcium oxide, etc.
Correct.
And jaggery has some of these oxides. So it will, in a small amount, yes, you can have a small amount, it will give you some antacid effect. But again, to get a lot of antacid effect, you'll have to eat a lot of sugar. So there's, you'll have always, you have to weigh these things. Okay. Gautami had a question about, we've talked about, sugar cane and palm sugar and something. What about dates?
Yeah.
Khajur.
So dates also have sucrose, they would have mostly sucrose, and they would also have glucose, fructose in it. So anything that is sweet, right, in nature would mostly have one of these things. So if when people want to replace the sugar with a mash of dates, it is you you are replacing it with a sugar. But because it's a complete fruit, it also has fiber in it, it has other vitamins in it. So it's a healthy fruit to have. So it's good to have dates, because it's like a complete nutrition. But if you just look from the point of view of sugar, then it's probably similar if you want to have it in bulk. Is that what you asked, or
I
something
think
else?
I mean, the question was, Gautami, have we answered your question? Yes, he's happy. Okay, there's a question in the chat from Sudha asking, what is liquid glucose?
So that is the glucose syrup probably that comes from the corn syrup, I think.
Yeah, high
If
fructose
I'm
corn
not
syrup,
wrong.
probably, maybe.
Yeah, so from the corn, so when you have the corn actually has sucrose, and this sucrose, you can use some enzymes, and sucrose, as you know, has glucose and fructose. But if you use some enzymes, specific enzymes, and convert the fructose into glucose, then you'll have just glucose, and that's how glucose syrup or that liquid thing comes. That's what I feel.
Okay, let's see. Are there any questions on YouTube? No. Are there questions on
I mean,
Facebook?
just to add, yeah. In the meantime, just to add, so even to get glucose as a powder, this only is generally done. Corn is the most common source to even obtain glucose. Naturally, you won't find a lot of glucose in nature. You'll find more of sucrose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
There is one question from Aradhya about looking at the chair and boat conformations of saccharides and something. Aradhya, this is a hardcore organic chemistry question. You can ask us separately. We'll be happy to tell you about this. I'm sure Sarita will be very happy to discuss the conformations of sucrose and sorry, of glucose. But I think it's a little too technical for chai and why. So, please write to us. We'll be happy to answer this, and you can these are, you can also what is the effect of chair versus boat, but they are just conformational isomers that you're seeing. Okay.
The more prominent ones are generally shown in the diagrams.
Yeah. Gautami has one more question saying, is it okay to have fruits like banana and chiku in large quantities? I don't know what is large quantities, but
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have that as the only meal for in all your meals, then it may not be okay. But it's perfectly. I mean, fruits are healthy, and you should have fruits. So yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know what is large, but maybe you can have a couple of them in a day for sure.
well, I
Like
guess it
don't have
also
like
I
1
also
kg in a day.
depends on it also depends on what you have done. I mean, if you have run a 40-kilometer marathon and after that you're going to eat 6 bananas, you're probably doing perfectly fine, right? But if you eat 6 bananas and when you get up in the morning and also eat a full breakfast after that, you're probably having too much of starch or whatever else in it. Okay. Wait. Lots of questions coming in. I thought we just answered this thing about, are there advantages of using jaggery versus sugar or brown sugar versus sugar? The perception that they are more healthy.
So jaggery is brown sugar is actually nothing much, not very
It's
great. I mean,
unbleached sugar. That's all. The
yeah.
bleaching
So
step is.
and what is done is sometimes also in some cases little bit of that molasses of the jaggery that is added back to the sugar, and that gives it that brown color and a healthy feel. But if you ask me, jaggery is at least has a little bit more nutrition than brown sugar.
Okay. Why people use artificial sweeteners instead of table sugar is what Dhanashree is asking. Is it because they have less calories? Yes. The answer is yes. And also, historically, there were times where in war, etc., sugar was not available, so they came up with these substitutes. There is a very interesting question from Tanay in the Q&A box. I'm not sure how to make this. Are there animals or microorganisms that taste sweet? Do you mean, are there animals if we eat, or microorganisms we eat, they taste sweet, or are there other animals that have a sweet taste sensation? So I don't know how to interpret this question.
think animals probably is asking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
actually, animals. I mean, if it is animals, I mean, it is known that some animals can taste sweet. So I think cats are an example of an animal which cannot. I mean, they have found this on the basis of some experiments with cats, and also presumably, I mean, apparently cats can't taste sweet, but dogs can. So that is probably with reference to the taste buds on their tongues. So there are differences like this. This is the example I am aware of.
no, I
And
think he has clarified on the chat. He means, are there animals that humans eat which taste sweet?
animals that humans eat. Okay, so the thing is that when we eat animals, okay, so what we are mainly eating is the forms they're part of their muscles, right? So bones are not had generally. So the flesh, which mainly consists of muscles, is had. So muscles are rich in protein and not as much rich in carbohydrates. Okay, so basically, the taste, I mean, that you would get in the most common meats is probably close to the umami taste. But there are some meats like crab and all which actually taste a little sweet as well. So probably it is because of I mean, I'm not sure which molecule the crab meat has, but it does taste little. Some meats do taste sweet, but on an average, meat corresponds to protein, and even in crab for that matter. So proteins generally are not that sweet. I mean, they have that tempting taste in it, which is like comparable to monosodium glutamate. That is the umami taste. Maybe
Okay.
it's good to find this out as well.
All right. Okay. So I do not see any more questions. Are there any questions on Facebook, team? I think we've taken all the questions here. Yeah. Anything there?
No. I think
Okay, there's one question is, what is Demerara sugar? It's a sugar which originally came from some island.
Okay.
It's just a colored sugar, effectively. It's just, they add the
Brown
molasses.
sugar, I think, right?
It's brown sugar, yeah. They just add the molasses in the last step,
Yeah.
so it gets a little color.
Correct.
Okay, so we are past 12:30 already, and I think this is time to thank Sarita first for a wonderful session where we've really learned a lot. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we are going to go home with and really think the next time we pop a spoon of sugar, or even worse, put some other stuff into it and liberally use good instead of sugar or something like that. Before we end, let me remind you about next week's session, the first session of the month, the first session of March, which will be in Prithvi Theatre. It is a hybrid session. We will be physically present at Prithvi. Prithvi is allowing a physical audience. So we will be there at Prithvi Theatre, but it will also be on YouTube and Facebook and Zoom. That part will also be there. And it is going to be on the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, the successor to Hubble, which is 100 times more sensitive and has just been launched some time back, and has just reached its parking place in its orbit. And we're going to have a session on the amazing technology that's gone in the telescope and the science that's going to come out of it very soon. So you might want to stop your screen share because you're just doubling this. Okay. So on that note, thank you. And stay tuned. Send us an email at outreach@TIFR, outreach, at tifr.res.in if you would like to be added to our mailing list. Otherwise, please follow at ChaiandY on Twitter or Facebook, and you can get all the updates. Thanks again, Sarita. Stay safe, and thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.